What if I told you that the map of Europe we know today could have looked completely different? Imagine a world where Germany isn't just one country, but a sprawling, powerful empire at the heart of the continent. A world where the Holy Roman Empire, a political entity that lasted for over 1,000 years, never fell. Today, we're diving into one of history's greatest what-ifs. What if the Holy Roman Empire had survived? To understand this alternate reality, we need to rewind the clock. The Holy Roman Empire wasn't a centralized state like modern France or Britain. It was a complex patchwork of hundreds of territories, kingdoms, duchies, free cities, and bishoprics, all loosely united under an elected emperor. Its famous description by Voltaire as neither holy nor Roman, nor an empire, was a jab at its later weaker state. But for centuries, it was the dominant power in Central Europe. Its official end came in 1806, when Emperor Francis II, under pressure from Napoleon, dissolved the empire. So, for our scenario, let's imagine Napoleon's ambitions are checked and the empire gets a chance to reform instead of collapsing. The most likely path to survival would have been through centralization, a process that was already being debated in the 18th century. Picture this: instead of Napoleon steamrolling through Europe, the empire, perhaps under a more assertive and forward-thinking emperor, successfully consolidates its power. This would mean creating a unified legal system, a common currency, a standing federal army, and a stronger central parliament, or Reichstag. The patchwork of tiny states would be streamlined, maybe consolidated into larger, more manageable provinces, similar to how modern Germany is structured with its states, or Länder. This wouldn't have been easy. The local princes and dukes would have fiercely resisted giving up their autonomy. It would have taken immense political skill, maybe even a controlled internal conflict, to forge a true federal state from this medieval mosaic. So, let's say they pull it off. By the mid-19th century, we have a federalized Holy Roman Empire, a constitutional monarchy with the emperor as a powerful head of state. This entity would be a behemoth. Geographically, it would stretch from the North Sea down to northern Italy, and from eastern France across to modern-day Poland and the Czech Republic. It would encompass not just Germans, but also Czechs, Italians, Dutch, and French-speaking populations. This multicultural nature would be its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. How would this superstate change the course of history? First, let's talk about the 19th century, the age of nationalism. In our timeline, nationalism led to the unification of Germany under Prussia and Italy under Sardinia-Piedmont. In this alternate world, there's no German unification question because a German-led superstate already exists. Prussia's rise would be contained. Instead of a militaristic, Prussian-dominated Germany, we might see a more federal and perhaps more liberal empire, with power balanced between different regions like Austria, Bavaria, and yes, even Prussia. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor who forged Germany through blood and iron, would have had a completely different career. Maybe he'd be a skilled diplomat within the imperial Reichstag, arguing for Prussian interests, but not the architect of a new nation. The very concept of German identity would be different. Instead of being narrowly defined, Germanness might be a broader imperial identity, much like Britishness once encompassed the English, Scottish, and Welsh. The non-German peoples within the empire, like the Czechs and Italians, would face a critical choice: assimilate or push for autonomy. A wise imperial government might grant them significant cultural and political rights, creating a truly multi-ethnic federation. A less wise government could try to suppress these identities, leading to constant internal strife and separatist movements, mirroring the problems the Austro-Hungarian Empire faced in our timeline. Now, let's fast forward to the 20th century. The great conflicts that defined it, World War I and World War II, would be completely reshaped. World War I was triggered by a complex web of alliances, nationalism, and imperial rivalries. With a massive, stable Holy Roman Empire at the center of Europe, the entire balance of power is different. The German question that so worried France and Britain would be answered, but in a way that might be even more intimidating. Would this empire align with Britain and France? Or would its sheer size and influence make it a natural rival? The Franco-Prussian War of 1870, which created deep animosity between France and Germany, might never have happened in the same way. The dispute over Alsace-Lorraine, a key source of tension, would have been an internal imperial matter or resolved differently decades earlier. Without this lingering grievance, the alliance systems that led to 1914 might not have formed. Perhaps the Great War could have been avoided entirely, or perhaps a conflict would still erupt, but it would be a clash between this colossal Holy Roman Empire and a coalition of other powers like Russia and France, fearful of its dominance. Let's imagine the darker path. If the empire became aggressive and expansionist, its industrial and military might would be terrifying. A world war with this version of Germany at its center would be devastating on an unimaginable scale. On the other hand, if the empire embraced a role as a stabilizing force, a peacemaker in the heart of Europe, the 20th century could have been far more peaceful. Its federal structure and experience managing diverse populations could have offered a model for international cooperation, perhaps leading to a precursor of the European Union, but centuries earlier. What about culture and technology? A surviving HRE would be an intellectual and artistic powerhouse. The creative energies of Vienna, Prague, Berlin, and Munich would all be part of one political entity. Think of the combined genius of Mozart, Beethoven, Goethe, and Kafka, all being citizens of the same empire. This cultural cross-pollination could lead to an incredible renaissance of art, music, and philosophy. The Industrial Revolution would transform the empire into an economic giant. Its factories powered by the coal of the Ruhr and Silesia, its goods shipped through the ports of Hamburg and Trieste. Economically, this empire would be the engine of Europe. With no internal tariffs and a huge domestic market, its economy would boom. It would likely be a major colonial player, competing with Britain and France for territories in Africa and Asia, which could of course lead to new conflicts. The rise of ideologies like communism and fascism would also be different. Would a more traditional, monarchical empire be more or less resistant to these radical movements? It's hard to say. A stable and prosperous empire might have less appeal for revolutionary ideologies. But a state struggling with ethnic tensions and inequality could be a fertile breeding ground for them. So, what does our world look like today? In this timeline, you might be planning a holiday to the imperial free city of Nuremberg, or taking a high-speed train from the Kingdom of Bohemia to the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, all without needing a passport. The map of Europe would show a massive state in the middle, simply called the Empire. French and Russian history would be completely different, having developed in the shadow of this giant. Britain's global dominance in the 19th century would have been seriously challenged. The United States might have remained more isolationist, or it could have allied with Britain and France to contain the empire's power. The European Union might not exist because its core purpose, to bind Germany and France together and prevent another war, would be irrelevant. The empire itself would be the unified Europe, or at least its core. Of course, this is all speculation. The forces of nationalism that tore apart empires in our timeline were powerful. It's entirely possible that even a reformed Holy Roman Empire would have eventually crumbled under the pressure of its own diversity. But it's a fascinating thought. A world where the ancient thousand-year Reich never fell, but instead evolved. A world where the center of Europe is not a collection of nations, but one vast, complex, and powerful empire. What do you think? Could the Holy Roman Empire have survived? And would it have been a force for peace or for conflict? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into alternate history, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the greatest what-ifs of our past. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next timeline.